Okay, one thing I want to share with you, checklists are becoming extremely important. And I want to share this week a beautiful thing that we're creating. It's called the buyer checklist. This goes through everything from the initial consultation with your buyer all the way down to post-closing ideas. So stick around. We'll get right to this, and I appreciate you joining in. All right, good morning. Hey, this is Rick Rainus, and I have a wonderful flight plan laid out for us this week. If you'll recall, last week we talked about the best listing checklist and how to identify all of the tasks that go into a great transaction for your home seller. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about the perfect itinerary of things to do and handle with a buyer. You know, what's really important is making sure that we have consistency. We have a very, well, I'll just say a perfect plan for laying out all the different things that are necessary to accomplish during the course of that transaction. So today we're going to talk about the different things that are involved in the process. We're going to walk through all the different steps, when to do them, how to do them, and some ideas that can help you build your buyer presentation all the way down to the buyer showings, and then making sure that you're on top of things that you're on top of things as you're working through the contract to close process. So anyway, again, my name is Rick Rainus. I've been doing this for 21 years. I've made a lot of mistakes through the years. I'm still perfecting some of the things that I want to try to accomplish. There's so many changes that happen in the industry from year to year. So the things that we did back in 2003 and 2004 are vastly different than what we do. But the main thing is commitment to the consumer process. So if we can handle this at a really high level, our referrals will increase. The level of understanding of of the fees that we charge. The client gets to really kind of appreciate why they're paying you what they're paying you, and so we are going to walk through all these different things. So I want to welcome you to this video. This is where we really want to work on navigating all the ins and outs of real estate. You know, today we're going to break down this ultimate buyer checklist, and we want to help guide you and your clients from start to finish. So today we're going to kind of go over what's involved with the initial meeting. We're going to talk about the home search. We're going to talk about writing the perfect offer. We're going to talk about the processes and the steps from contract to close. And then we're also going to talk about things that we want to do post-closing. You know, we want to make sure that every step in this process is handled accordingly, that we don't miss anything, and that everything operates on a very smooth process for you and your client. So the initial meetup with the client, so depending upon where you get them, whether it's a referral or if it's an internet lead, or you just happen to stumble across somebody in your networking aspects of it, we always want to make sure that you're actually scheduling a buyer consultation. I get people call and they say, hey, I want to go see a property, or I'd like to get into that particular property. Will you schedule the appointment? And a lot of agents are very eager to get out and just unlock a door and say, hey, thanks for coming by. It's great to meet you. If there's anything else I can do, let me know. But what if we could schedule the presentation? What if we could go through the things that we do really well, go through the consultation to determine the needs and assessments of that particular buyer? Would that elevate our game a little bit? You know, just like going to see a physician. Sometimes you go in for that initial deal. Hey, I'm having this particular pain. They then diagnose, and then they offer some procedures. Well, kind of a similar way. We're going to give all the things that we do. We're going to learn what's going on in their world and what their needs are, and then we're going to come up with a calculated effort on how to find them the right property. So the interesting thing is once we schedule that meeting, maybe it's at that first showing appointment, but no matter what, always work towards having the presentation. And I think that you'll create a higher level of expectations. You'll identify the things that you do really well, and you'll also find out exactly what that particular person is looking for. So as we're getting involved in all this from the initial meetup, we want to make sure we're sharing all the value propositions that we have, and then also offering some of the solutions that we have to several problems that come up. Obviously, financing comes up, inspections come up. We want to talk about title companies. So those are our three major partners, and we want to make sure that the consumer and our future client knows who we prefer to do business with. Now we're going to start the home search, right? So now that we've identified the types of properties that they're looking for, we want to make sure that in our checklist we've got auto notification for our home search. So every time somebody says, hey, this is what I'm looking for, go create a home search, get their phone number, get their email, get them to a spot where you can text them certain things. But you want to make sure that you've got a buyer home search created, whether it's in your personal website or through your local MLS. I personally prefer setting up home searches through my personal website. I've got an IDX search feature. It auto notifies them. I want the client going to my website. If I have an IDX website, LPT offers Lofty, there's KV Core, there's a ton of others out there, Real Geeks, and there's a ton of property home search websites out there. So I would rather see you send them to that website versus the MLS. It just keeps them from veering off whatever, and then end up having a discussion with another agent, and then they end up working with that agent, not you. So always try to keep them into your world, not others. Once we identify the properties, we're obviously going to schedule home showings. I would encourage every agent in here to practice. Go find some people, create the dress rehearsals, go unlock doors, learn your inventory. I found it very interesting one time that a client said, hey, I'm interested in this particular property. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. I was just in that property last week. Here, let me tell you a little bit about it. If you know more about the property, you can identify the things that the home buyer is actually looking for. So at the end of the day, know your inventory. And if you're going to market for specific areas, every once in a while, you want to have a day on your calendar that says, look, I'm going to go preview 10 properties. And then just go look at them, figure out what's good, bad, whatever, and see if the values are right. And that way you can actually talk better about the value. So you want to schedule your home showings. And then as we're going through those properties, you want to review the pros and cons with each property based on the original consultation. Was it close enough to the job? Was it close enough to schools? Did it identify and solve the challenges that they want in the home that they're going to purchase? So sometimes buyers will make adjustments. And so by reviewing the pros and cons of all the different properties, you will discover things that a buyer might be a little bit more willing to accept versus eliminating altogether. So review those pros and cons. And then always ask the client, which property is on the top of the list, and create those top properties. What I found is when I'm touring a bunch of properties, if we go through a home and we've got a stack of data sheets for those particular properties, if we walk through a home and they say, you know what, Rick, this isn't really it, I like to create the visual. I take that data sheet and I just rip it up. I rip it up right in front of them, because that's a signal for me to them is that I'm eliminating this property, and so are you. We're not going to consider it or come back to it. You might, but more than likely that one's been eliminated. So once we identify those top properties, let's go look at them again. Hey, listen, I know you may or may not be ready to make a decision today. However, I think it's important to continue to make sure we're focused on the right properties. If these are the two that you felt were best, let's go take another look at them and make sure that those are in the running, or if we can eliminate them altogether. So the second showings are really huge. So let's say that we get to a spot and we identify the property that we want. Now we've got in our checklist, we're going to make that offer. We're going to put all the documents that are involved in the buyer deal. We're going to put them in there, and we're going to make sure that we're getting those filled out correctly, identify the right forms, filled out correctly, and that we've got signatures from the buyer. At this point in time, we also want to confirm that we've got the right amount of loan numbers. So our pre-approvals are super important. Remember, we had already submitted our referrals to the lender, inspector, and the title companies. Now is when we want to make sure that we're able to buy the property. So at the end of the day, we're going to present the offer with all the data and all the information to the seller so that they can make the right decisions. We also want to make sure that we know what we're going to be negotiating. If there are certain things that are critical for a buyer, I like to call the seller and say, hey, are there any things that are non-negotiables for a seller, so that I can make sure I can prepare my client for that. And typically you'll find agents that are willing to say, hey, we need to close in a specific amount of time. We need to close on this particular date. We've got some relocation company paperwork that's involved. So there's a lot of things that we want to discover on the front end before we actually present the offer. So all right, so now let's say after all the negotiations, we have an executed contract. Now is when we want to make sure that we're getting copies to the lender, we're getting copies to the title company. We want to make sure that we are now taking all those right forms and we're sending them into our company for compliance. We want to make sure they're also checking our data and make sure that we've got that in place. Once we get the inspection scheduled, we get the reports back. We want to make sure we can negotiate through the repairs and work towards that resolution. We also want to make sure that that we're finalizing all of our loan approvals. Because remember, in the contracts, we usually have a day for third-party financing, just to make sure that everything's all dialed in, everything's been turned into the lender for final loan approval. So we also want to confirm the appraisal dates. We want to make sure that that's in line with what the timing that we're looking for. So appraisal is super, super important if there is a lender involved. So we want to make sure that's being scheduled right. Then we want to work towards, next up, we want to work towards closing documents. We want to make sure that the title company is handling, you've got title commitments, you've got all these different things. We want to make sure we've got an opportunity for clear title to be passed to our buyer. We want to be in communications with the title company for those types of things as well. Once we have that, we want to review the closing statements. We want to make sure that everything that we have negotiated on the contract is accurate on the closing statements. So we have that as a particular checklist. And then we schedule closing. What a great day that's going to be. We have closing scheduled. We've got a situation where, I prefer to have both buyer and seller at closing at the same time. I understand that sometimes that's just not possible, but the good news about this is that when you can put everybody together and it's been a harmonious experience to this point, the good news is that the buyer will be able to ask the seller some additional questions. The seller's going to feel good about who's buying their property. And I tell you, there's just a lot of fun and a lot of camaraderie at those types of things. If you've had some contentiousness or whatever, and maybe some people are out of town, who knows, you can schedule it outside of all that. But my suggestion is if at all possible, have your buyers and sellers together. Tons of things get answered. There's always a question about something that the buyer has that didn't come up on an inspection, or questions about the neighborhood, and they just it's just a really nice transition of home ownership when you're able to do that. So I always encourage you to have both buyer and seller at the closing table. All right, so once we get that done, we're going to go to closing. We're going to have that on our checklist. We're going to have reviewing the closing documents. We're going to make sure that it's funded. That's on our checklist. And now we're at a situation where we've got some post-closing activities. We want to make sure that we are celebrating this new home for our buyers. Maybe there's some photos that you can create at the title company that's with you and them, congratulating them. But I will tell you, now is the best time to ask for a review. At the closing table, send them to Google, send them to Facebook, wherever it is. Say, hey, would you mind, sharing a little bit about your experience with us at this particular transaction, and letting others know what a great job that I did possibly, and that how much you've enjoyed the transition to your new home, and how we've been able to help you. So that's where you're going to get the best referrals, is right there at that particular moment, and especially if everything's gone really well. And if it has had some hiccups, those are the times to resolve those hiccups, make sure everything's been taken care of, and then ask for that referral. So you want to make sure that you're getting those referrals and those reviews, actually. So next up is that we want to make sure that this client is now updated in our CRMs. So even if it already was, it's a checkbox. Yes, it has been. So we want to make sure that we can actually start to send them some handwritten notes periodically. But at closing, we're going to send a handwritten note to the title company. We're going to send one to the lender. We're going to send one to the home inspector. And we're also going to send one to the other agent and anybody else in particular that may have had some impact in this particular transaction. It's really, really good to do that. In addition to this, we want to make sure that we've got a checkbox for a 30-day check-in. It is great to call the client. Hey, just wanted to say, man, I can't believe it's already been a month. Are there any things that are popping up that you were unaware of that maybe we need to look into? Just tell me how things are going. That phone call is super important because that solidifies the transaction. It wasn't something that was just, hey, I helped you through here, I got paid, and now I'm not interested anymore. This is what helps set you up for high levels of referrals. So always do a 30-day check-in call. And then at 6 months, I also do a check-in call. Hey, we've got some cool things coming up. Just want to make sure you're aware of. Hey, did you get your information package from the HOA? If you're ready to file taxes, make sure that you got all this information from that. So on that 6-month call, kind of have some ideas of what you want to talk to them about. But it's just a great way to say, how are you enjoying your new home? It's a wonderful, wonderful way to stay in touch with your clients, and make sure that that's on here. And that reminder, some people do it anyway, but some people need reminders. Make sure that is on your calendar. So that 30-day is shared to your calendar so that it is a reminder. And then obviously on year one, you want to send them an anniversary card. So the longer you can stay in touch with that client for whatever reasons it may be, the higher level of referrals that you're going to get from that particular individual. So create this buyer checklist. I know sometimes it's a pain in the butt. People go, I don't need a checklist. I don't need a checklist. But I promise you, if you want to elevate your game, having these checklists in place are super, super important. I have found that when I have done my checklist at a high level, I sell more real estate. When I drop my checklist or I try to do it all on my own, that's when I mess up and that's when I struggle and that's when my referrals start to drop. So just some suggestions I've got for you. Hey, and by the way, we talked about the importance of lenders. I want to give a shout out to my good friend Tammy Goodman. Tammy Goodman works for New America Funding. She is a wonderful woman. She's moved to Houston a little over a year ago. She's building some wonderful relationships with a lot of great agents here in the Houston market and all across Texas. She's also licensed in Tennessee. So if you ever need anybody, you're looking for a lender that just can give you possibly a second opinion if you're struggling with your current lender. But I promise you, one great conversation with Tammy and you'll be hooked. She's super intelligent about the mortgage business. She understands all the ins and outs, been doing it for a long time. She is the original mortgage girl. So go to www.themortgagegirl.com and you can find all about Tammy and the wonderful way she treats her clients and gets her buyers into houses. So Tammy Goodman, New America Funding. So thank you so much. And on that note, I hope you guys have a great week. Remember last week to go review your listing process checklist, and now we have a buyer consultation all the way down to post-closing checklist. These are great things. Next week, we're going to talk about the social media checklist, how you can manage your social media via checklist to make sure you're not missing anything. I have multiple channels. I've got multiple things that are in place, and sometimes I forget to post on certain things. And organically, I want to continue to try to grow my network, not only from the sales side, but also from agent to agents. So if you know of anybody that might find this helpful, please share it with them. I'd greatly appreciate it. And I hope that you and I can co-op a deal real soon. And on top of that, go have a great week. Happy flight, and we'll talk soon. Take care.